Hello, everybody. This is Mike Regan, Midwest Account Manager for NEC, representing the NEC SL1100 telephone solution. And I'd like to welcome you to another one of my continuing series of pre-recorded WebEx seminars covering various aspects of the SL1100. And in this episode, we're going to talk about transitioning from TDM to a voice over IP solution. And what we're hoping to show you over the next few minutes is we're going to try and show you what you need to be aware of when transitioning your business over from TDM telephony to voice over IP telephony. And what we're going to cover over the next few minutes is we'll cover some voice over IP terminology you'll need to be aware of. We'll kind of dissect the IP address. We'll talk about the benefits of the SIP protocol. We'll take a look at the toolkit, your virtual toolkit that you'll need to do with voice over IP, as well as go through a voice over IP checklist. So let's start with the terminology, right? And we'll go over some basic voice over IP terms, starting with host. Host is any computer or device, sometimes referred to as a node, connected to a network. Your IP address is your 4-octet code, that grouping of 4 numbers. Each one of those groupings of numbers is referred to as an octet. Subnet is your logical grouping of computers or network devices based upon their IP addresses. Subnet mask is the 4-octet code that filters out the commonalities of the IP address. Common example is 255.255.255.0. The 255 masks out the octets that are common, and the 0 reveals the differentiator portion of the address. The subnet address is the portion of the IP address common to the devices within the subnet. Right. MAC address. I'm being an old telephony guy. MAC has a different meaning for me. MAC means moves, add, or changes. But in the network arena, MAC stands for Media Access Control. Every device that goes onto a network has a unique hard-coded MAC address that allows you to access it, to program the device to fit within the parameters of the network you're working at. Example would be a router. You need to put a router on the network. In order for the router to work on the network, you need to put it in the same, subnet as the rest of the devices on the network. But in order, how do you program that subnet into the router? In order to do that, you've got to access the router via its MAC address, the Media Access Control address. LAN is your local area network, usually a private network or the network within the facility. Your WAN is your wide area network, and that could be either private or public. And then you have your 3 different types of network devices on here for sharing information. And we'll kind of go in reverse order. Hub was kind of the original connecting device for sharing the network signal. Hubs are really hard to find anymore. If you still have one, keep it in your toolbox. You can use it when troubleshooting voice over IP applications. Then you have your switch and your routers. Now, a lot of time in common vernacular, the switch and router becomes interchangeable. And that's not necessarily true, and that can be confusing. Routers are important to us, especially for doing voice over IP, because routers can assign IP addresses, whereas switches cannot. Other than that, they're very similar. but we need to have routers on the network so that we can assign IP addresses to like our IP phones and whatnot. So that's why it's important to know the distinction. Again, routers can assign IP addresses, switches cannot. So it's important that we use routers on the network when doing voice over IP, because you have to assign an IP address to all of the phones on the system. Let's try and take a look at the IP address and kind of decode it a little bit. And again, I'm an old telephony guy. I'm not a networking guy. But when I saw this analogy for the IP address, it kind of, a light bulb kind of went off with me, and I thought I'd share that with you. You can consider here, we show this is actually a subnet address. The full IP address would include one of these numbers as well, but this is the subnet address. And you can think of it in terms of a mailing address. For instance, this first octet could be the state. The second octet here could be the city. The third octet could be the street address. And then this fourth octet would be the house address, or the house number. Right? So we have our little neighborhood here, which is a subnet, and the common address to all the subnet is 172.16.1. And then each of the individual devices have their own little house number, 110. So this device, its full IP address would be 172.16.1.110. Down here, its full IP address would be 172.16.1.44. It's important to know this, because let's go up here where I have this labeled router, and its IP address is 172.16.1.11. Let's pretend that this is actually a KSU, an SL1100 KSU, and you need to get into program. So it does have a default address on it. This is not the default address, but for our purposes, let's say the IP address of the KSU is 172.16.1.11. In order to program that, you would need to put your computer into the same network. So you'd have to go into your computer settings and change the IP address to, say, 172.16.1.101. Now these devices are in the same network, and they can talk to one another. Right? So that's why it's important to understand the meaning and how the IP address works. And then you see for this little subnet, your subnet mask is 255.255.255.0. Right? And all of these devices on here would have the same subnet. Okay? Now if you go over here to this little neighborhood, you see it's kind of similar. This subnet has a state address of 172, city address of 1.16. However, its street address changes to 0.0, and then you have the different house numbers. All right? So in this instance, and let's go back to calling these routers, the router over here is 172.16.0.110 with a subnet mask of 255.255.255.0, and all these devices would have the same subnet mask. That tells them that all of these devices are in the same network. All right? Now you notice that we have a similar address between this router and this router. It means we can kind of point these two routers to one another. Right? They're both 172.16, but they have a different street and a different, obviously a different house address. But if you change the subnet mask to 255.255.0.0 on both of these, you'll be able to point them to one another and across the wide area network, and now you've just kind of created a little voice over IP solution. Right? So hopefully this, decoding of the address, of the IP addresses helps you out with understanding more about voice over IP. All right, benefits of the SIP protocol, Session Initiation Protocol. That's what SIP stands for, right? Some benefits of the SIP network: voice and data can now use the same network equipment and the same bandwidth, so optimal utilization of the bandwidth, right? You reduce the need for copper lines. You can have reduced toll or long distance charges. And you're now starting to integrate your voice, data, and video devices all on one network. What is SIP? SIP is an IETF standard. IETF, Internet Engineering Task Force, is a governing body that defines the protocol. All right, so it's just SIP. SIP protocol is designed to be independent of the transport layer. So I believe it fits right in between the transport layer and the session layer. And it can run on the TCP protocol, the UDP protocol, or the STTP protocol. I only mention that because when doing troubleshooting, tech support may direct you to these areas in programming to make some adjustments. Okay. The benefits of SIP: the NEC on the SL1100 allows for the ability to use both copper and SIP trunks. So you can run analog and SIP trunks either exclusively or simultaneously. In fact, the system is set up so that you can run analog, digital, and SIP trunks on the system. By the same token, we have the ability to use analog, digital, or voice over IP or SIP phones. Right? So we are truly a converged switch. Right? So if you have a mix of phones on there, you're not losing any features and functionality of the system. SIP phones can talk to digital phones, SIP phones can talk to analog phones, and vice versa. Also, SIP phones can access POTS lines, and digital phones can access SIP trunks. Analog phones can access SIP trunks. So with the converged switch, we're able to maintain all of the features and functionality of a telephony system because it's the CPU that does the switching. So that gives us a little bit greater flexibility in how we deploy the system, right? And again, all three types of phones, analog, digital, and IP phones, would have access to any SIP trunking on the system, as well as they would have access to POTS lines and PRI circuits as well. It does make it easier for us to program voice over IP extensions as well as the SIP trunks, and we can make some easy adjustments to the codec or the compression for bandwidth setting. And obviously, voice over IP, I shouldn't say obviously, but voice over IP can make it easier to manage network, and that you can unplug a phone from one network port, plug it into another network port, and all their programming pops up. That's the difference with voice over IP. Voice over IP, the programming stays with the device, whereas in a TDM switch, the programming stays with the port. Okay? So some toolboxes, or some tools that you would need in your toolbox to help with deploying voice over IP. And these are virtual tools, right? And the first is BOSUN Utility. BOSUN Utility is an IP address and subnet calculator. So it can help you calculate subnets and IP addresses and all that. This is a free utility, and here's the website where you can download this utility. Then you have the WAN IP address lookup. What's my IP address? Wireshark. Wireshark is very important. This is used for troubleshooting and analysis of the network. And it's downloadable from wireshark.org. It's another free utility. This one you need to download and live it, love it, and learn it. Because when you call into tech support to do any type of troubleshooting on a voice over IP application, tech support is going to ask you for two things. They're going to ask you for a copy of the database, your programming database, and they're going to ask for Wireshark run on the areas or the extensions that you may be having trouble with. All right? So it's very important to download this and become familiar with it. And then there's online connection tests. MySpeedVisualware.com is one of them, but you want to be able to test the network for speed and testing. Then you'll have to become familiar with your Windows command utilities, both the ping command, packet internet grouper, as well as your IP config command. And that's the other thing where tech support will go. You have an IP phone that's not coming up. They'll direct you to the ping command and ask you to ping it, which sends a signal out to the phone and then waits for the signal from the phone to come back. Right? And if you want to learn more about these command utilities and the other command utilities, you can go to Microsoft website and look at the Windows command utilities page. Okay? Your IP checklist. IP can, if preparations are not properly done, IP can propose to be a kind of a troubleshooting challenge if people aren't prepared. So what we're trying to do is to help you get prepared so that troubleshooting becomes that much easier. And one of the things, the best way to do that is to position yourself before the sale and not after. In other words, have the correct questions answered about the customer's network and IP. You know, what's their interpretation of IP? How are they going to utilize IP? You know, what other devices are on the network? You know, get all those questions answered. See how their network runs. Is there any quirks to the network? Everybody's network runs is different, right? Every hour spent before the install analyzing the network and looking at other devices on the network and understanding how their network works will potentially save you about 4 hours of troubleshooting afterwards. Okay? And before installing an IP phone at your customer site, do it on the bench in your office first. So it helps you get a better understanding of what to program and how to program the phone, and it helps you look in front of the customer. Remember, the IT person is your friend. They're the gatekeepers. They hold the key to the network. So you need to work closely with the IT person. If the company you're working with does not have an IT person, then contract or hire an IT person if you're not comfortable with being your customer's IT guy. Bring in an IT person to help you with some of these network issues, to help you learn more about the network. They know what to look for on the network to avoid potential pitfalls. Right? Remember, every network is different, not only in how it's laid out and as far as the devices on the network infrastructure, but also what devices are attached to that network? Do they have a security system that's IP? Do they have IP cameras on the system? Do they have an access control system that's IP? You know, what other, you know, don't assume that it's just the computers that are on their network. Find out every device that's on the network, because you'll need to know those IP addresses so that you don't start repeating IP addresses. Right? Always have a laptop on site for troubleshooting. Always map out the IP addresses. I don't know about you, I have trouble with phone numbers, transposing numbers and stuff. I can only imagine when you go into the 4-octet code of IP addresses, how much trouble I'd have keeping those straight. So map them out and write them down. Download the Wireshark for network troubleshooting. Understand your Windows commands. Remember, you cannot see, hear, or feel IP. I've heard IP referred to once as it's not hardware, it's not software, it's kind of nowhere. So voice over IP is a concept. There's not a lot of tangibles to it. When things are not working or don't come up working, think simple. Check your connections. Check your cables. Double check your IP addresses. Make sure you're not duplicating IP addresses. Double check your network connection. Right? Check your PC. Use all of your resources. And sometimes, all else fails, reboot the system or the PC. I'll tell you a quick story about this. I was doing a trade show once up in Minneapolis, Minnesota. When I do a trade show, I try and get there 2 hours ahead of time. So I can set up my booth, make sure everything's working. If I have any issues, I could work them out well ahead of the trade show. Well, in typical fashion, I got to the trade show 2 hours ahead of time. It took me 15, 20 minutes to set up my booth. Everything was working on my system. Great, no problem. Went, made phone calls, returned emails, all that. Came back to my booth before the show started. Everything was still humming along. And when you know it, about 15, 20 minutes into the show, I looked and my IP phone was down. And just on instinct, I went right to my computer to check the program. And then I thought about this slide. Think simple. And it was nothing changed in the programming. Phone was working and it stopped working. But I thought, keep it simple. I checked my connections, and then I started checking cables. And when you know it, I swapped out my Ethernet cable for my phone. Everything came up and it worked perfectly for the remainder of the show. So when troubleshooting, think simple first. Okay? And if you do have issues, don't forget about our tech support department, www.necntac.com. Go there and register, get a tech ID number and your password. We have all kinds of training videos on this website. All the technical documentation for the SL1100 is there. And then you will have access for our free tech support system. Here is our supply manager account, or our supply account manager map. These are the different areas and who covers them. I cover the Midwest, and all of our contact information is there. If you have any questions regarding the SL1100, don't hesitate to contact one of us. That is very important, especially with voice over IP. You're going to have questions. We're there to help. We have technical support available to help, sales support available to help. We have all kinds of support resources available to you. So you're not going into this voice over IP stuff alone. All right? So utilize us. With that, I thank you for your time and your consideration in viewing these webinars. And if you have any suggestions for webinars you'd like to see me do, please feel free to drop me a line at michael.regan@ necam.com. Thank you. Have a great day.